on Facebook, I figured, what the heck. So today I'm going to run you through doing paperless depositions using iPads. Many of you who know me, especially from the Atticus group, and other of my trial attorney friends have seen me with always carrying around 2 iPads. And they're always asking me, well, what the heck? So I'm going to show you today the reason I like to do that. They're a lot of fun. Paperless depositions are just awesome. It allows you to do a lot of different things in remote locations because as part of my work with the Burkey law firm, we handle Medicaid van accident cases and tractor trailer cases. Those cases oftentimes can generate something like 20,000 documents or more. And not only that, but I'm finding myself having to fly as other truck attorneys to different parts of the country, California, another day it might be Washington, D.C. or Florida. And so being able to put all your documents into one nice package like this and literally not having any paper really does solve a lot of problems. The main thing, I've been doing these probably, 6 years maybe. And I noticed as I was traveling around the country, I was asking court reporters just out of curiosity, hey, have you really seen anybody doing these? Paperless depositions with iPads. And I was hearing more and more that, no, not really. I'm sure there are folks out there that are sophisticated in doing it, but I'm in a tractor trailer case that was down in Florida. I did a safety director's step-up, and I committed to doing it without paper, and it scared the living daylights out of me, because literally it's a leap of faith. So what I want to do today is get you over that fear by showing you all the nuts and bolts of how to do it and put it together so that you'll be comfortable in doing your own deposition. I'm going to include practical tips, and I'm going to show you rather than just talking behind a PowerPoint presentation, although I've got one set up for you. Now, along the way, if you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Send us a message on Facebook Messenger, our telephone number, which is 770-587-5529, or email, and I can get that information to you later. I'm happy to share strategies, tips, our checklists, and whatnot. So let's go ahead and try to get started. I'm going to introduce a really good friend of mine, Tamar Ansari, who's a trial attorney and practices in Kennesaw, Georgia.
Yep.
Say hello. She's going to help me role play a little bit. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it on the fly. I envision we're going to have her set up as either a court reporter at one point, perhaps a witness too. My outline for what we're doing is, first I want to introduce you to the technology, the iPads, the apps that go with it and make them work, and get into, even a little bit later, into the desktop, the iMac. I'm going to talk about the need and the solution to that need. I've kind of introduced it a bit, which is going to be how to take a bunch of documents and be able to present them efficiently in remote locations. I'm going to show you how to arrange the room for the optimum presentation of where your witness should be compared to where your monitor is, because that's really key. I'm going to introduce you on how to use documents in the iPad environment, how to handle actually doing the deposition, laying a foundation for the documents you're going to use, having the court reporter understand how those exhibits are going to be marked and tagged to the deposition transcript, and little ins and outs on being able to actually do the deposition. And then what I call the what the fork moments, which is how to react when something goes wrong. Which, knock on wood, I've been doing it 6 years, as I said, and with the exception perhaps one time, I've only had a complete failure. It's embarrassing, but I'll tell you what that was. I literally forgot the iPad. I'm sorry, but you just can't overcome that one. Most everything else you can. And then finally, I'm going to show you some new techniques to use with the iMac. For defending depositions, I think they're most helpful. And a checklist and a toolkit for what to bring with you when you do them. Now tomorrow, what might make this fun is, or maybe not if you ask me a tough question, but if you got a question that comes up along the way, because you're kind of learning with the remote audience, feel free to blurt it out. So, the technology that makes it all work is going to be a combination of things. Which is the applications and the iPads. So notice that I'm using a program I really like that's on the iPad, which is called iNotes. And that's this app here. It's a nice free-form, easy-to-use word processor that can be done on the fly. And the nice part about having it on the iPad is that, let's say you're on an airplane. A lot of times, I'm pressed for time, I'm on an airplane, I'm literally doing my outline for the deposition that's coming up for tomorrow's deposition in the flight as I'm traveling in that evening, and I'm doing it perched up on the tray, sandwiched between, who knows, two other guys next to me, and I can do my outline as I go. And this program allows you to do it. So that's the iNotes. It's flexible, it has bullet points, and what I really like about this is if you've got an outline like you would, let's say on a regular notepad, just like a notepad, you can check off when you've gotten through it. Now, it's beyond today's scope, but I've literally done a trial in federal court where I've tried the entire case out of an iPad, and I've used my direct examination outline using this iPad Notes app. Just by doing that same thing, I take it up to the podium, ask questions, and when I'm done, I check it off. So that's the iNotes. The iPads themselves, you've noticed I've got two, and I'll get into why I've got two. One, I just think it's cool to have two. It's almost like having a dual monitor display. Well, it is, really. The cost of them varies. I checked Apple.com last night. The cost goes from $799 for 64 gig to $1,349, $1,400 for the 1 terabyte version. I'll tell you, I recommend getting the full top of the line that you can get, and I'll tell you why. And by the way, these are 12.5-inch iMac Pros. They're the way to go. And don't forget, whatever you do, to get the Apple Care that goes with that. I priced it out last night at something like $150. It's well worth it. If something goes wrong or breaks, they'll fix it or replace it. The reason you want to get as much memory as you can, and I'll get into that a little bit later, is because you're going to be loading all this data onto the iPads in resident memory. That means that when you get to wherever location you're going to be to do your deposition, you're not required to have an internet connection, and that's huge. So you're not tied to someone else's technology. And I'll tell you, as a rule of thumb, that is key on any kind of technology that you're going to be using. You must not rely on anyone else's technology. You got to rely on your own technology, your own connection points, your own data that's stored resident, that no one else is going to have the ability to influence. I'm not saying necessarily that someone's going to screw you up, but the ghost in the machine, right? You want to eliminate all potential variables in how you're going to use your technology. So the fact that they're residently stored, it's actually stored in the iPad, is huge. That means if you want to do videos and have video clips, you're going to need to have a lot of storage capability, because the one thing that chews up storage is video clips. And as we get further, I'll show you how those video clips can be used. It's pretty cool. So get as much memory as you can. Be sure to get the Apple Care. Look on apple.com for details, and they'll even give you price comparisons. To give you a feel for it, when I bought my first iPad in 2013, I got the most memory and the highest powered iPad I could get, and it lasted me something like 5 years. So the other part of the technology that's huge is, in the use of the app icons, is a suite of documents called trial pad, and transcript pad. There's also a third part of the suite called document pad. I've not really used it that much, the document pad, but I think it's pretty strong, pretty powerful. You can get those through the App Store. And I priced them out last night for the suite, $309. It's the best money you could ever spend. Transcript pad.
Can you tell us a little more about the document pad?
You know, I don't know a whole lot about it, other than it will do things like it'll annotate documents, it'll store them, it'll Bates number them.
Oh.
But that gets into another part of the technology that I was going to talk about, which is Adobe Pro DC. If you get the fully functioned, powered Adobe program, I recommend you get it cloud-based. It can do everything. It can annotate, it can create bookmarks, it can Bates number, and I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. And so I'm mostly organizing my documents using the Adobe Pro DC program, which is why I'm not really using it as much. Now, the Adobe Pro DC I priced at $14.99, $15 a month, which is really well worth it. So, the need and the solution I've already kind of alluded to, handling large numbers of documents. In my trucking cases and Medicaid transport cases, as I've mentioned, you can travel to distant locations. I like to do a thing, I don't know, other trial attorneys I believe will be doing this too, where we'll have staged depositions. One deposition will be to retrieve, collect documents, and authenticate them. And then we'll do an actual second deposition for substantive issues. So doing that document deposition, where you've got all the documents that a defendant might give you, and what you want to understand is where those documents come from, how to authenticate them. This allows you to do it pretty easily. And it also dramatically reduces your prep time. So what I mean to say by that is kind of something I call what you see is what you get. So whereas back in the day, all your prep time was taking, well, a mass of paper, right? And if you had to go to a remote location, or heck, even to my conference room here in my office, I would have to take everything I intended to use in that deposition. I'd have to put it in binders. I'd have to tab it off. I'd have to have an index. Then I'd have to have a set for me. I'd create another set for the witness, another set for the attorneys, and yet another set for the court reporter. You'd have to send it out to a special production company that supports trial attorneys, the copying, and they have to do it precisely. There are firms that do it. It's very expensive. The lead time on that would be in excess of, I'm guessing, a week. Now, if you're really pushed, you might get them to turn around in a sooner time, but then you're paying a premium for having to do that. So doing it on the iPad, where all you're doing is taking digital documents on your server and moving them over into a file and then downloading them onto your iPad, saves all of that effort. So that once you get it in your iPad, literally what you see is what you get. So I'll give you an example. That's a document. This is a pleading, if you can see that. And now that you've loaded it, it's just a matter of presenting it and making certain that you've got a clean connection.
So you just email it to everybody?
Well, we'll get to that. That's a great question. What I do is before the depo, I load everything digitally, pre-marked. This would look. This is the digital file, which is Bates numbered, which is why you need the Adobe program, because it Bates numbers for you. You load it all onto this, you show up and you give one to the defending attorneys and one to the court reporter. You've already got it pre-marked, it's loaded, and you're ready to go. Now in that time, I've actually gotten rid of these because the technology is becoming obsolete, and I'm just linking them straight to my cloud-based server. And I send them an email with a link. Typically now I'm finding that defense attorneys have their own laptops that they bring with them to the deposition. All they need is an internet connection to get their email. They get the email from me that provides them with a cloud-based link to the file I just gave them, and they've got all the documents I've got. So really, I've had hardly any, if at all, complaints about using the digital documents. Really, a defense attorney, all he's going to be concerned with, or she, is to make certain that they're looking at the same thing you're looking at, just as if you were in the hard paper world. Because, you know, the old dance is I'm going to show you what's been marked as, and I don't have any paper, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 1, and you would always hand that to the defending attorney first before you, because the witness is allowed to see it. The other nice thing as far as that goes is it's on the screen for everybody to see.
Yeah.
So you eliminate some of that. The other really nice thing about the iPad technology is, take for example that document. Now, if I'm scrolling through it, yeah, maybe I don't want to do that because there's hundreds and hundreds of pages. It's in color. It really wouldn't be feasible for me to print all that out and take it with me to do a depo. But if you've got this document digitally stored on your iPad, not only is it in color, but you can zero in on exactly which page of a, 250-page document to question the witness with. A lot of times before I started using this, I would take, let's say, a page out of this, maybe that page, let's say date's number 1060. And maybe I've got a page or two ahead of it or behind it to give some, context to the exhibit. I would still have defending attorneys complain, well, wait a minute, we want to see the rest of the document in context. Well, now literally having the entire thing in front of them eliminates that objection. The other thing is, photographs can be displayed with a lot of clarity, as you can see, and with the ability to zoom in or zoom out of the image. And the other thing that's really cool about the iPad technology is that you can do different things, such as a call-out box. Or you can take your pen, and I've got one with me, and you can circle it. And something I really like to do is to look at I like to load at the beginning of the case the parties' websites. That can be really fun. And you can use that using your trial pad technology. I'm going to take also, it plays video clips. So I literally had this experience, and I'll play it for you because it plays in real time. Now help us nail down the one thing. And we've got traffic signals up here in the image. Can you point to the ones where you say you see the greenish glare coming from?
We could see the glare from this side here.
And it was greenish.
It was greenish, but she's not right here. We're still, a good little distance from it.
Now help us nail down. Now notice some things. You can actually mark, using the iPad, the image that she was referring to, throw it up on the screen, and not only do you have the witness interacting with the image, which is really cool, you've got it on video, and then you take a snapshot of that, and then you send it to the court reporter and separately mark it. So you still have that capability to modify exhibits. So that's just some of the power of what the iPad can do. There's a lot more to it, but my thought was to do that for a separate seminar or webinar at some point in the future. So moving on, connectivity. Connectivity is huge because that represents a potential failure point. As I mentioned before, you want to eliminate all those variables that might screw things up. So obviously your main objective, particularly if you're going to an unfamiliar area or unfamiliar office or conference room, is to get an image on the screen. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do that, and in fact, we've got like 5 minutes before the webinar starts, and Patrick and I are sweating bullets because we couldn't get the damn thing to connect, because we had this conference room shortly before we started, which kind of serves to illustrate the point. Now, you've got usually a couple of different connection points if you're at a conference room like this. One might be for the table, and usually they have an insert here, and see what we've connected to is this device here. But now here's the thing, I don't like to rely on table connection points. I've found that, gosh, maybe 8 times out of 10, the table connections fail. So you might show up expecting to be able to just plug straight into the table, and it's not going to work. So then what do you do? So what I always like to do is I get one of these huge cables. This is an cable. I don't know, you can get it on Amazon, I think, for roughly, ain't cheap, but maybe 50 bucks, 50 to 75 bucks. And it's long enough to where it's been long enough for any room I've been in, even huge conference rooms. And you take it and you connect it to your iPad, and then connect it to the back of the TV through an HDMI plug. Tomorrow, it looks like you've got some questions.
So you connect the HDMI cable to the iPad or the flat screen?
That's why I like it. So you hook it directly from your iPad, which would go in here,
Oh, I see.
and then the other connection point is going to go to the back of the TV set.
Okay.
You know, well, I don't know how many people are familiar. I'm assuming folks are familiar that every TV, with the exception of this one, has an HDMI plug in the back,
Okay.
and you hook it straight to the TV.
Okay, so from your iPad to the TV.
And there's really only a couple of failure points here. One, it's going to be the HDMI cord. Now, I have had them fail, so you should always keep more than one. I've got 3 in my bag, just in case. And 2 is this little doohickey, which is the iPad adapter. And notice I've got it marked because I've got 2. So I've always got 2 in the bag. I've got one that goes with me and an extra one that goes in my tool bag, which we'll talk about later. As long as you have that and a TV that works, I mean, you're literally good 99% of the time. And in just a few minutes, I'll tell you how to handle that in the what the fork moment section of the webinar. And that just plugs in here. The other thing is, similar to the tabletop, do not use Apple TV. Now I know everybody, like if you go to some mediation houses here, they'll say, oh, we got Apple TV, don't worry about it. I bypass all of that using my extra long cable, because here's the thing, which you won't realize until you get into things. You try to hook up to their Apple TV, it's going to have a password, and even though they give you the password, you can be in the middle of your presentation, it times out for whatever reason, maybe it just wants to give you a hard time. Then you got to scramble to find the password, plug it in, find the connection point, because there's always some sort of interface to get to the Apple TV. It's just best to avoid all of that and not even worry about it. And I know some folks that like to bring their own Apple TV. I don't really think that solves the problem, because really the same issues are there. And also you've got to worry about internet. But this way you don't have an internet connection to worry about, because Apple TV requires an internet connection. You just plug it straight in the back of the TV. Now, you might be thinking, all right, so that sounds all great, but what do I do if, you know, a lot of us are used to doing, just talked to an attorney this morning, I'm like, we were trying to settle on the location for the deposition. And we were wondering, all right, what's the best place? This, it's a truck driver. He's down like Milledgeville. And he says, he's got literally a steel building that he has. And I remarked to him, I'm going to go over here and show you. I remarked to him, well, heck, I've done depositions in closets before. So, no worries. And most trial attorneys have had that experience. So here's the simple solution to that, which is you bring your own monitor. This literally costs, I don't know, you can go to Best Buy and probably pick this up for $150. You get a monitor, and I'll show you how to configure the room in just a second. You put the monitor at the end of the table. I wonder if we could do it now. Plug into it with the iPad to a direct connection, and you can throw the image on the screen just like you can throw on the overhead. So even if you have a conference room that's not equipped with a monitor, you still have the ability to use the system with the iPads. And maybe if we get a little bit of time, I can actually set up and turn it on so you can see that the image is it's really just as good. This size, I'm trying to remember, is maybe 35 inch. That's an optimum size. It's easy to carry around. It only weighs a few pounds. And it has a screen that's big enough to where if you've got a witness and defending attorneys here all the way to here, everybody down the length of that table can see the screen. Maybe Patrick come around from this vantage point just to show.
And it has the HDMI plug in the back?
Yes, that is a good question. This one only has one, which I believe is this one. And you would plug in your HDMI cable there, and the other end would go to the iPad adapter and plug in here. And then as long as it's got power, and then you get on the interface that hooks it up to the correct source, and you got a good screen. So, the next portion of what we're going to talk about is the court reporter. Which I call how to deal with a confused court reporter. As I said, most court reporters I run across are not familiar with this setup, especially the dates numbering. And so it's really important to get to the deposition, if you can, a little bit early and explain to the court reporter, here's what we're doing. Because really, if you think about it, you reverse roles with them, you put yourself in their shoes. The court reporter is tasked, and her main responsibility is to not only get the testimony, but to make certain that all of the exhibits to the deposition are collected and made a part of the official transcript. So she's nervous if she's not used to seeing it done the typical way, which is you get your paper out, you get a stamp from her, and you put it over the bottom of it, and you hand it to the witness, and then she collects it at the end. So when everything's digital, it's throwing her off and making her uneasy. So you have to reassure her with the process. And the process would go something like, look, Miss Court Reporter, we'll have tomorrow play the court reporter. Here's what we're going to do. I've got all of my deposition exhibits pre-marked on this flash drive. Okay? And I'm going to hand that to you.
Okay.
All the exhibits you need to use are going to be on that flash drive. And most court reporters, I'm sure everyone else has had the experience, always have their laptops too.
Right.
So she's going to be able to plug in and access the documents. And then I tell her all of the pages, each page of an exhibit is going to be Bates number. Let me plug back in again. Is this our plug-in point? So I can illustrate. So she's used to seeing a multiple page document marked simply Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. Now that doesn't work for our purposes because you want to be able to zero in on precisely the page and passage you want in, say, 250 pages of documents. So each and every page has to be uniquely numbered. That is the key to a Bates numbering system. Each page has its own unique serial number. It is never duplicated in the case ever again. And that way, you can always find this page, even if you have, like in my cases, sometimes 30,000 pages of documents.
So do you still, that one 30,000 page document, is it still marked as an exhibit though? And then it just each page is Bates numbered?
Ah, that's a great question. The answer is no. So here's how you would do that. You're going to read to her the range. All right, so Ms. Court Reporter, when I get to this exhibit, I'm going to read the entire range of documents. So it would go something like, Ms. Witness, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 1057 through 1129. And I'll represent to you that that is a document titled the Commercial Truck and Bus Safety Synthesis number 1. You see that document? Yes. You explain to the court reporter that she's going to treat that Bates number as if it were a sticker. It's a plaintiff's exhibit, whatever. This becomes the exhibit number. The other really nice thing about that is you've got multiple depositions, especially in complex cases, right? That document's always going to be the same. It's not going to be a plaintiff's 1 here and a plaintiff's 3 in the next depo and so forth. And across depositions, you'll be able to easily refer to the very same document that was discussed by maybe 5 or 6 different witnesses. So then she's going to ask typically, all right, well, I've got all of these preloaded exhibits. Am I going to attach each one of these to the transcript? The answer to that is no. She's only going to attach the exhibits that you actually use, just as in a real deposition with hard copy. She will only use and attach to the transcript exhibits that you actually read out and use to have the witness testify. You're just giving her the whole collection of exhibits in the event that you use them. You need to be certain to tell her to treat it just like a regular exhibit, so she needs to initial it and date it. Now digitally, there's a stamp, and you might discuss this with your court reporter first. There's a stamp that they would put on the bottom down here. It's a digital stamp. It has the court reporter's initials, the date, and the deponent name.
So the court reporter would actually be able to go in there and do that digitally, or would she have to print it out and do it?
It's a great question, because that's the question they always ask. So what they do is they take it to production. Most court reporters have a production department. So she's going to carry with her digital exhibits, take it to production. They're going to fix typically a job number, because every court reporting event generates a unique job number. It could be 7633. So you want them to affix a digital stamp over the digital Adobe document, much like what you're doing with a Bates number, right? And it's going to say job 7033, January 2020, initials of the court reporter, JAB, let's say.
Just like if it were an exhibit.
Just like if it were an exhibit. Now that's a huge piece, at least in my mind, because what that does is that helps perfect your record. Let's say you go and you get a big verdict and you're going to take the case up on appeal. To me, that's huge. You want to have your record perfected so that this document can be authenticated for when it was used in the litigation. So that's what to do with the court reporter. The videographer is another issue. Most videographers, you're going to find the experience of, and if I could just, well, we'll just have you, we'll pretend you're the videographer for now. They want to shoot from the end of the table. And they want to put the witness at the very far end, And they usually have a camera set up here. It's the way they always want to do it, each and every one.
Who brings the videographer?
Well, the taking attorney always orders the videographer and the court reporter. But a lot of times, let's say, like a recent depo I flew out to California, you call in, and a lot of times the videographer is brought in by the court reporter service that you order, and you don't have a relationship with either one of them. Now, things happen, and a lot of times I'm just getting there, shortly before the depo starts. Well, they get set up, and they want to do this long shot. The problem with the long shot is they're going to take a zoom all the way down here, so they're going to zoom into the image to make it fill the screen. And you're not capturing all the microfacial expressions and the way the witness is going to squirm as if you had a closer shot. Doesn't rely on a zoom. So instead, I'm going to have you get up and sit over here, and I'll show you the best way to do that. So you're going to be our witness. I'm going to be directly across the table from the witness. So that the camera is going to be right behind my shoulder, right here. So now I've got a nice tight shot. So I can see all the facial expressions. When I ask a really tough question, you grimace. that I think would be lost if you had the typical long shot. The other nice part about this orientation, it really is, I've experimented with many different layouts. This is the one that works best. If you want to pan over on a monitor that's mounted on the wall, it's an easy pan from witness to document. And let's see if we can give an example of that. Patrick, you might be able to emulate that. So let's bring you over here. Yeah, so witness responds, grimaces, and then you pan over and see the document for a second, and then pan back to the witness. See, that works really smooth. Now, the other part of this configuration is you got to have the court reporter nearby. Once again, the court reporter is used to doing things a certain way, and she's got some concerns. She's got to hear the witness. They typically need to see them talk, because that helps them, true up with what they're hearing. So they always want to camp out like right here or here. That's not going to work, because we want over here the defending attorneys on this side of the table. And the only other way to put the court reporter is to put her in that corner here. They're going to squawk about that, but you just need to reassure them. A lot of times they'll say, well, I'm going to be in the shot. It won't be for very long. So I'm going to get a chair and I'll show you how that would look. So we'll get the court reporter here, and actually this is a good representation of what, because they usually will have their little keypad thing, and this is the way it works best. So that way they can see and be able to hear what I'm saying, and they can still look over and see what you're saying, and they're close enough to hear you. And that's the optimum setup. A lot of times they want to be here. It just doesn't work, because then they're like a floating head in the middle of your screen if you ever need to pan over and have an image of the documents being questioned. A circular table really works pretty much the same way with that orientation. What to do if they've already set up? I run into this a lot. The best thing to do is just to be patient, nice, but say, look guys, I've done this a lot. This is just the way it works best. Trust me. And don't feel uncomfortable in telling the videographer, hey look, we just gotta break you down and have you set up all over again, and it's gotta be here. Sorry. And don't forget, you're paying them a lot of money to do it. You're paying a videographer on a typical deposition sometimes as much as $1,000 or more, $1,500 perhaps, if it's an 8-hour deposition. So it's your money, and you got a right to set it up the way you want to set it up. So we talked about witness configuration, handling the exhibits. I think we've pretty well gone through Bates numbering. As I said, the main thing about the Bates numbering is to remember that every number is unique and separate and is never used again. Actually doing the deposition. So I like using 2 iPads. The main power of that is, again, what I want to do is eliminate the potential for failure. So what I do is I load a mirror image of every exhibit that's here in this trial pad. With the same image over here in this case. So if you notice, they're the same. So who knows? For some reason, this one crashes and burns. I plug this one in, and I'm good to go. And sometimes they run out of juice. If you notice, I'm actually skating the edge because this one's only got 13%. And now if that were to happen, and for whatever unknown reason this runs out of juice, then I just take it and plug it into this one. The other nice thing about that is I have my outline on one iPad, and then I've got my presentation documents on this iPad. So what I'd like to do is to create an outline, and I'll be reading from the outline. Now, my style, and this is really the topic for another webinar, I don't like to have all my questions scripted out. I just think that removes you from the ability to operate, in real time and listen to the witness. But I think with complex cases in particular, it's really important if you've got to hit some key areas that you can at least have them bulleted out so that you remember to hit them. And I also like to keep up with a little bit of notes here and there, especially during a document deposition. If the witness says, oh yeah, well, we have a policies and procedure manual. It's called the, Joe Smith underwriting manual. Then I might quickly jot that down here in my iNotes program. And then when we come back and debrief from the depo, we can send out an additional RPD that seeks that document.
So you don't like add it to your outline or anything. Like you don't make the note there in your outline. You have something called iNotes where you make that note.
So yes, so this is this is another app that comes preloaded with the iPad, so you don't have to buy it separately. And it looks like, there's the icon. And I'm going to show you too.
Where is it? Which one?
It's this one right here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So,
Yes, okay.
so the power of having the second iPad is you've got basically it's your notepad.
Yeah.
It's your notepad and it's your redundancy built in. So you've got a level of confidence. Remember I said at the start of this, I wanted you to take away that fear factor of going completely paperless. So not only are you redundantly loaded with your documents, but you can use this separate one as your outline. And then what I do is I create now a new file. In addition to the outline, I'll have depo notes where I'll write down these things like, don't forget to send out a second RPD for the Joe Smith underwriting manual. The way that works too is if you enable it for iCloud storage, the iPad is going to mirror and be the same thing, which is also a really handy feature. So this is going to look the same as this one, because they're updating in real time as long as you have an internet connection, which again supports the redundancy factor. So you won't have a stale outline here. Now, where it can get really goofy is if you got a wonky internet connection. I had this experience at trial, and you have one updating. You have this one that's the most updated, and then this one wasn't updating, and and that can be a problem.
Yeah.
The other cool thing about iPads is, and I don't know, let's see, I don't use that one, is transcript pad. I have had a recent case, I don't have it loaded. Let's try that one. This is the loaded sample. You can, in a big case that I recently settled, a Medicaid van accident case, we had, I think, 15 depositions surrounding a couple of core issues. I was able to take what witness Joe was saying and source him on the fly in real time with depositions in other cases, other depositions in the same case, and challenge him on his testimony based on the testimony of other witnesses in the same case using transcript pad. Because it's searchable. If you notice here, let's say we'll plug in, and I don't have this one thrown up on the screen, I might be able to. Yeah, let's try that. Let's say, what is, that shows every instance of the keyword address that I just plug into it, which is crazy.
And that's preloaded on the iPad as well?
No, this is part of that suite of technology I spoke of earlier.
The App Store, from the App Store.
From the App Store.
And what is it called again? The
Transcript pad.
Transcript pad, okay.
Yeah, that was huge. Like the key issue in that Medicaid transport case that I just finished, well, one of the key issues was training. So I had like a training director in deposition,
Wow.
and she was talking, and I could literally punch in the keyword training, and every single time the word training came up across depositions, it would show up. So, when you're doing the deposition, be sure to read out the range of documents that you're referring to. As I talked about earlier, I'm going to show you what's been marked as plaintiff's exhibits 239 through 426. And I'll represent to you that those documents are the commercial driver license manual for the state of Georgia in 2019. I'm going to show you what's been marked now from these group of documents, exhibit 526. Bring that up on the screen and have them talk about it. Well, that's a good segue into the what the fork moments, because it won't click off. So from So the single point of failure, as I mentioned, is this thing. Because I'm going to demonstrate it right now. If you don't have the adapter, you don't have an image, because your HDMI will not plug in directly to the iPad. So you got to have one of these. So literally, one of the things I'm always searching for when I leave the house to go to a depot is, where is this? And I got to have two at any given time, because who knows, maybe it goes to the machine, this thing fails. Then that would really be a problem. Now, let's say that does happen. What do you do? And here's been my solution to that. I've actually done this, not so much because I had a failure. I'll tell you, I've actually rarely had a failure. But just because, was that 1057? Just because at the time I was set up, I just didn't have, we weren't referring to a whole lot of documents. So rather than get the whole rig set up, because I didn't have an overhead monitor, I opted to do just something simple like, notice here we got the two iPads that are redundantly loaded. It's the same document, and I'll show you. All right, so let's say you forget this at home. You're like, oh crap. Here's what you can do. You just treat it like a hard copy exhibit. All right, I'm looking at Exhibit 1057, Ms. Witness. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 1057. You'll notice it's the same image that I'm referring to. I'll represent to you that that's the commercial truck and bus safety synthesis number 1.
And everybody else has this on their little.
Everybody else has this on their preloaded documents.
Okay.
And so just even though you've crashed and burned on being able to present it, you can still work your way through it, just basically going old school with high tech.
Right. Makes it so much easier than dealing with a bunch of paper and.
It really is. You're going to get hooked on it because the nice thing about it is you can have. Oh yeah. So Patrick found this and I forgot to introduce it, but it just seemed really funny. So. Thing that I like now, which is really cool, is let's say I'm defending a deposition. I've got my iPads, but now with the iMac in the 28-inch version, I can bring with a cloud-based server, which I have, and a good solid internet connection, which the office here has. I can bring my entire desktop, everything on my server, with me into the deposition while I'm defending my client. I don't know if y'all saw a recent Facebook post I had on that, where we're doing a truck case that you and I are familiar with. Where is that image, Patrick? Is it?
It was on the.
Oh yeah.
It was a couple slides
You
back.
know what I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
And that's, notice that I've got the desktop right here off to the corner, in addition to my iPads, and of course we got, I don't know how many, I think we literally have close to 10 attorneys in that case now. And see all the paper they have. This is all their paper. I don't have any paper.
That's great.
And of course this is my client. And the nice thing about that is, you know, you've got the ability to go, to have access to your entire range of documents in your file right then and there. So invariably, you might have an attorney that maybe gets into an area that you didn't expect, you didn't preload. You're going to have all that in front of you using the iMac.
And flipping through pages.
Right. Looks like we got about 7 minutes, but I'll just show you real quick. So if you're looking, there's no connectivity issues with this. It's all Bluetooth enabled.
Make sure they're charged, I guess. Is all.
Well, not even that. All you have to do is plug it in. All you have to do is plug it in, you turn it on, and it automatically taps in, at least here at our office, onto the server. Now, if I were at a remote location and I had, let's say, a really strong internet connection, I could do the same thing by logging into my cloud-based server. The one I like to use is Dado. It was recommended by my IT guy. He recommended it because he uses it for all of his medical clients, and they were super worried about, patient privacy and information. At least he just tells me, and I don't know that I would know any better, but it's encrypted on the way up and encrypted on the way down, so he says it can't be hacked. Whereas, we all know that Dropbox has had some issues. And honestly, I don't like the interface for Dropbox. I don't want to use it, and I worry about the security issues too.
What do you use again instead of Dropbox?
It's called Dado.
ATO?
Yeah, let me see if I can find. This is what the interface looks like. It doesn't have their branding on it, but it's DATTO. So one of the things that I do, I've kind of got it in my mind now, but we actually have a checklist of things to bring. Not only to bring in my tool bag, and I'll show you in just a moment before we wrap up, but also for your paralegal to do. One, make certain your paralegal reaches out, let's say a week in advance, to wherever it is you're going to do the deposition. You're going to ask them a couple of questions. One, do you have a monitor on the wall? But that's not the end of the story. You got to have a monitor on the wall where you have an access point to the HDMI. Notice we have that issue here. So here we got this fancy monitor, all this technology. Well, guess what? We can't get to the HDMI plug. So what I do is I always have my paralegal ask that whomever's in control of the conference room, they get their iPhone or whatever, and they snapshot a picture of the connection point for the monitor, and then email that to us, so that we can double check the connectivity, so that we can connect with the HDMI cord. Secondly, that there's enough clearance to where you can actually get in behind and hook it up. I had a recent experience where I couldn't hardly squeeze in to get the HDMI plug. And then we want to ask them, you know, if they've got the tabletop, but you don't want to just rely on the tabletop, because often they fail and they just don't work. You might want to ask and also have your paralegal confirm that the connectivity on the tabletop, if you're going to rely on it, actually does work. And that really should be done a week in advance, so you got plenty of time to contemplate, all right, well, what do I do if they don't have the things I need? And then you might fall back on the tabletop Samsung that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, let's say you're traveling to California, worst comes to worst, they don't have an overhead monitor, and you really don't want to rely on your iPads. Well, if you're in LA, man, hop over to the Best Buy,
Right,
pick this up and unbox it for like $150, and you're good to go. At one point I bought, and I don't know, I had a picture of it somewhere. I bought a travel case. You know, they have those cases, I forget what they call them now, Pelican cases. Cost $500. It was overkill. It looked like you could put a shoulder-fired missile on it, in it. I literally just about pulled my shoulder out, and I realized, you know, it just wasn't worth it.
These things right here.
Which ones?
Your mouse and stuff. My kids, the one that we have at home, they love to be on that doing games, and so they'll often run this thing down. So when I'm trying to do work at home, and say your mouse is, you know, low on juice basically, and
Right.
in the middle of something, and it's not working anymore. So I guess you have to always have that little
Ooh.
charger.
I'm glad you brought that up. All right, so here's the thing. I always make it a habit before I depot, the night before, I plug both of these in. See, because right now as we stand, this one's only got 9%, so that they're 100% fully charged. So I just eliminate that other potential problem. So that's a really good point. Now, I don't know quite how we're going to do this, but Kelly just told me that we've got some questions. I don't know, Patrick, are you able
Let's
to look
see.
like it's either that or maybe I can go to my Facebook page.
You probably can go to your comment
Yeah,
section.
do we go to comments?
Yeah.
No, I'm not finding it.
Yeah, I can't see on my end.
Well, and we're running a little short on time because I think we had this set to go an hour, and we have definitely gotten into that. If you got any questions at all, send us a direct message on, oh, maybe that's where they sent it, like we told you to.
Yeah.
On Facebook Messenger,
Yeah.
or email at fburkey@burkeylawfirm.com. Real quick, before we leave, I'm going to show what should be in your toolkit. I picked up this bag actually Kelly got this, my paralegal, on Amazon. The bag itself is maybe, I don't know, $100. I always have a power strip, monster tape, which is a little trick I picked up from videographers.
So put it down on the floor, real nice.
Yeah, you
Not trip
tape
over.
off here and it won't ruin the tables. So you won't be that guy that ruined someone's conference table. Extra HDMI cables. A clicker for the TV if you're going to use it. And then an extension cord, an electrical extension cord that you can plug your power strip into. I found that a lot of times if I'm in a conference room, you'd be amazed at how many don't have electrical connections. So this one's like a 20-foot cord, so no matter where you are, pretty much you're going to be able to have access to an electrical outlet using that. And then, of course, your power source for your standalone TV. This can be, you can, depending on what you want to do, you can either check this on airlines if you're flying, or you can fit it as a carry-on bag.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This is the question. In the example of challenging the witness with other testimony, are you using the exhibit iPad or outline iPad for the deposition transcript?
Yeah, actually that's a great question, because what you can do is use a transcript pad. And I'll call that up real quick, because the defense attorneys will say, well, where are you getting that from? And you can pull that up, if I can get a connection point. You can pull that up. So that they're seeing the same thing that everybody's seeing at the same time. So I'm going to show you, Mr. Witness, deposition of, who is the deponent? Where's his name? Whatever his name is here on page 27, lines 1 through 8, and it should show on the screen at the same time. Do we have any other questions? That it? Okay, so that looks to be our time. Thanks for participating. I don't know how many people we had ultimately, but
I think like a good little number.
yeah, good little number. Call me if you got any questions. I'm happy to help. Provide checklists or tips on what to do, and I guess that's it.
That was fun.